Good afternoon and welcome back to my channel and my Facebook page, you guys. And happy Thursday. I was about to say happy Tuesday, but no, today is Thursday, November 8th. Like, wow. Time just is continuing to fly. And I know some of y'all are kind of riled up about the election results. Some people are very disappointed. Some people who have voted, specifically African American voters, are like trying to attack the non-voters, such as myself. They're just like, you guys are ignorant. You didn't vote. And of course, I have my perspective on the topic, which I shared on Facebook, right? And y'all, when I say people just started to just go off on me, which I welcome because I'm like, everybody got their opinion, everybody entitled to their own perspective, and I welcome that. So I made a post and I shared actually some posts, right, in response to people saying that non-voters are ignorant. I shared some posts about that. You guys can just go check out my Facebook page at Danielle Leach on Facebook. And the post that I shared, like, the voters weren't too happy about it, But I'm like, this is just my perspective. Obviously, we see it differently, right? And it's okay to see it differently. You say 9 out of 10 of your posts speaks volumes to me. Keep on keeping on. Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate that. But not everyone agrees. I realize that. Not everybody is going to agree with everything I say. That is fine. If you agree, and I'm speaking to you and something that I say resonates with you, then that's great. But I realize that. Oh, okay, so they have like this little music thing outside my school, but yeah, so like I realized not everybody's going to agree with what I say, and I'm like, you know what, that's fine. And the fact that I think I'm the kind of person, I'm very laid back, like I don't argue, I don't get into this back and forth. Like, I may state my opinion and I may explain myself so that people can get a better understanding of where I'm coming from, but I'm not the kind of person to be going back and forth with a person. And I'm realizing that pisses people the fuck off, right? Because they just like, I'm not done yet. Like, I want to keep going. I want to keep with this debate. And I'm like, I'm not going to debate you. I'm more open to conversation. I can have an intellectual conversation all day about topics that I am interested in, right? That I'm passionately interested in. But I am not the one to just get involved in this heated debate where we're arguing. And with debates, it's like people tend to dismiss what the other person is saying. It's all about what you say, trying to prove that you're right, the other person is wrong. I don't do that. Even at my school, like, I'm taking this group therapy class that I kind of talked to you guys briefly about. And part of the expectation that my professor has is that students are emotionally invested, right? That's the word, emotionally invested. I'm just like, okay, what does that mean, right? And I had to bring it to him that there are different cultural differences in terms of emotional expression. And everybody is different, And then not to mention that some emotions aren't just visible. So just because a person, you don't see anything expressed on their face visibly, doesn't mean that they're not experiencing an emotion. He was like, oh yeah, I know that because some cultures, they don't express emotions, they express emotions differently. I say, yeah, that too, but that's not what I'm saying. What I said went completely over his head, right? And I tried to explain myself. I was like, but no, what I'm saying is that some emotions, irrespective of culture, you just don't see. Some emotions are silent, others are more visible. And if you guys Google it, there are 6 primary emotions, universal emotions. Those emotions are more visible. And I think that's the reason why they call them the primary ones. But there are some emotions that you're not going to see. If a person feels guilty, you may not see that. If a person feels understood, you may not necessarily see a physical expression of that feeling or that emotion, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, right? And so that's one thing. But in my class, I get the sense that because I'm so laid back, I got a tendency to be super laid back, y'all. Like, almost to the point where it's like nothing kind of bothers this girl. It's like, is she a human being? Because she's just so unbothered by stuff. And I'm like, no, I'm a human being. Yes, there are some things that bother me, right? But this is just who I am. I can't be any other way. And so I get the sense that he wants people to engage in like, okay, it says trying to connect. But yeah, I get the sense that he wants people to kind of engage in like these back and forth battles, interpersonal conflict, and where we're just kind of going at each other. And, you know, and even he says sometimes, well, oh, like in response to what certain group members may say, he's like, I can imagine that has an impact on you. Hi, Stanley. Just like I can only imagine how that may stir up some emotions in you. And I'm like, dude, I'm calm. If I'm upset, I'm angry, then you will know that, you know, but I'm chill. And that's another thing I think they misunderstand about Africans. You know, I consider myself African, but even native born Africans is like, generally speaking, sometimes Africans have a tendency, the more angry, so to speak, like the construct of anger, how most people interpret anger, the more angrier a person gets, like an African person, like the calmer they get, you know, because it's the way they regulate their emotions. And in Western culture, they look at that as a bad thing, like you should regulate. It's like on one hand, you should regulate your emotions because they look at it that you are well adapted in society if you can, you know, regulate your emotions and not necessarily be all over the place and be super emotionally reactive to everything that it impacts you, right? But on the other hand, they're like, no, you need to express your emotions and not be emotionally blunted, you know. So I'm like, okay, for me, what makes more sense is just to find a middle ground, right? Like, no, I'm not emotionally blunted, but if anything, I would say I'm more emotionally airplanes. Hope it doesn't mess with my broadcast. But for me, I'm more emotionally regulated, and I do have the tendency, like in situations that seem very stressful or emotionally provocative, you know, I tend to just I'm chill, man. Like that's my response, and I'm just like, y'all want me to engage in arguments? I am not about to be doing that. For what? I'm like, Mom, I told them, and this is class, and I guess when I told them this, it went right over their head, right? And people saying, oh, well, you don't say anything in class. That's bullshit. What I say, you guys it's going over your head. And I'm not responsible for that. You know, I'm only responsible for what I bring to the group and how I participate. Sure. But I'm like, I'm not responsible for that. And I told them how my mother and my family lives mostly in Florida. And my mom, you know, she's sick. She has every disease known to mankind. You know, like she's high blood pressure, you know, diabetes, heart attack, all of this stuff, right? Thyroid, you know, and seeing her stress so much, I think I've become the quite opposite of that. So I'm real chill, and I tend not to let things get to me like that. And I think it bothers some people. Like, it really irks the shit out of some people because they themselves, I can see them getting angry and angrier. Like, and just like, I could just get more calm. And the way my mind works is like, it can be the most terrifying thing, I guess, sometimes. But I will find like the silver lining to that. I will see the positive in that. Not that I minimize the significance or the intensity of the negative that's happening with the person, because that's important too, to acknowledge that, you know, whatever a person is experiencing, if it's bad. But I also can see the positive of it, and that's how I live my life. Like, no matter what I've been through in life, I take the positive out of it. You get what I'm saying? Even slavery. That's why some people, I can have conversations with some people because they just like, this girl is just way off. And even when, I say doctor, but Kanye West, when he made the point to say that slavery is a choice, or was a choice, and I made a kind of rationalization for his statement, I'm like, I can understand where he's coming from, right? And people just like, no, you know, he's wrong, he's a coon, da da da. And I'm just like, on one hand, the guy is making a lot of sense. Whether you guys want to see that side of the coin or not, like you want to see it from that perspective or not, it makes a lot of sense to me. One person can say, oh, well, this happened to us, we didn't have any control, or you know, or you can look at it from a different perspective and say, well, actually, maybe the African slaves did have some control. Let's try to imagine that they did have some control and that they could have resisted the entire way. There were some slaves who did resist, and they killed themselves. They jumped off the boat on the way over here from Africa. And he was like, no, I ain't going through this. And his point was to say that how in the hell for 400 years can people be in bondage? Or however long slavery lasts. He's like, how can people for that long, that's a long time to be in bondage, and to say that they were just in bondage, they didn't have any control or whatever. He was like, no, maybe they got to a point where they just accepted it, and that's a choice. When you accept something, whatever it is in your life, that is a choice. And so I'm like, I get it, right? And by me voicing my understanding of his statement to say that slavery was a choice, people got upset with that. But more recently with the election, like, people are just going down my throat, and I think that they want us to go back and forth. I'm like, I ain't about to go back and forth with you. Like, you can comment on my post, and I've welcomed comments, and people disagreed, and they call me stupid, and saying that my comments are stupid, and this and the other, and they're upset, and I was like, be upset. I've stated my perspective, you stated yours. Maybe you want to keep going on and on about it, but you can. I'm not about to do that. I don't have the time to do that, right? And even today, like, interesting, and not to say I don't, like, I can't, let's say, have a conversation, because I see it different. It's the difference between a conversation and just arguing, right? Like, I see arguing as, okay, you got these emotions involved, you just get angry, and the whole point really of a debate or argument is to try to prove the other person wrong and prove yourself right. And people do that in many different maladaptive ways, I think. That's arguing or debating, whereas a conversation, that's what I'm more interested in. I like to have conversations with people, where we're both making an effort to, yes, state our perspective or our opinion. Meanwhile, we're trying to see it from a different person's perspective. Like, that's, to me, the most valuable thing when it comes to human interaction. And so even recently, like, I made a statement, I shared this post, a photo. The photo is like a really old photo that I actually created through my literary organization called Ubawa, to say that it's an observation that I've made, but it's something that is real for a lot of authors, that it's like the black community does not acknowledge or recognize a black author's success until white mainstream media does. And a person interpreted that as me saying that, oh, well, black people just don't get support from each other within the black community. I'm like, that's not what I'm saying. And I said there's a difference between support in terms of a person buying a person's book and then acknowledging a person's success. And she's like, oh, well, that's just wordplay. I'm not about to get into this back and forth wordplay. I'm like, first of all, I don't see this as back and forth. I see it as us trying to come to terms and understand the whole point of the post, right? But it's the way she interpreted the post. I felt that she just misinterpreted it, right? Because she's like, that's not true. Black people, we're the first to support each other within the black community. It's that when people get big and they get successful, so speaking to black artists, is that they forget about the black community, forget where they come from, and turn their noses up. I'm like, okay, that is some validity in that, because we see that happening a lot. But I said, that's not what this post is about. Like, the post is about, she basically tried to invalidate what the post was saying. By saying that, oh, that's not true. And in fact, she said that can't be any further away from the truth. And I'm like, yeah, because you're seeing it wrong. Like, that's not what I said. I'm not talking about support. Yes, acknowledging one's success can be a form of support, but I'm not talking about support in that definition in terms of buying someone's book. Yes, we can buy and support each other in that way and buy each other's products and services, which we still, I think, struggle with doing that as well. But that's not what the post is about. It's about acknowledging one's success, taking note that, okay, a person is doing well, and giving them their props. A person, I mean, you see this at book signings. A person may show up to a person's book signing, and you just may even show up, but may, let's say, go online and purchase a copy of an author's book. Okay, you're supporting them financially, but a lot of people don't even read the book, let alone leave a review. That's a whole nother level of support. And then acknowledging to that person, oh, okay, I see you're doing well. Acknowledging what they're doing as successful. That is something different. And it matters. And she made it seem like, oh, well, no, the problem lies in the fact that people worry too much about what other people think. I'm like, okay, one can say that. So she made the claim, that's kind of to insinuate that maybe black authors shouldn't worry about what other people think. I'm like, okay, that's one point. But it's something to be said about this lack of acknowledgement of a person's success. We can't just dismiss it and throw it on the rug like, oh, it doesn't matter, when you have authors who are pained by this reality, like they're being affected by this reality. You know, it's something to be said about that. On top of the fact that if their success is not being acknowledged until white mainstream media acknowledges it, that's a problem. That is a problem. And she tried to make it seem like it's an individual problem, that, oh, these authors as individuals have this problem because they are looking for validation or support from people within a black community that they shouldn't. I'm like, no, this is a systemic problem. This is a social problem, because it speaks to the problem within our community as black people. Like, come on. It is our duty, it should be our duty anyway, an obligation to acknowledge each other. Success. If a person is doing well, then praise them. There's many different ways you can do it on an individual level. People who have these platforms, major platforms, to do it on a major level, acknowledge that, hey, you're doing well, celebrate it, make it a big deal. I say that often, a lot. Manu Bawa, being an author is a big deal. I'm saying that, yes, as a black community, we should make it a big deal. Long before a black author goes on to the Ellen Show, or makes their way onto the New York Times bestsellers list. Not to undermine the Ellen Show or the New York Times bestsellers list, because those two things are very great. But I'm just saying, it would be great if we had, let's say, more award shows within the African American community, and these people get acknowledged for their success. Because what I learned, and what I've been seeing even online, it was one person had shared that, oh, this is only one, they only have one African American award show, and it's still kind of small. I'm just like, small in terms of the number of people who show up. It's not small in terms of what it is, because it's a big deal to have an African American award show, but I'm talking about in terms of the number of people who actually show up and number of people who actually know about this show. We got to make it a big deal to celebrate each other's success. That's my whole point. And I'm like, I'm not going to argue. And I think some things can get misinterpreted also online. Because she is telling me, oh, well, you got an attitude. I'm like, I don't have an attitude. I'm the most chill, laid-back person. I don't have the time and energy to invest in negativity or having an attitude with a person. Like, for what? We just have a difference of opinion. I feel like you're not understanding it. What I'm trying to say, you're dismissing this whole reality that African American authors are experiencing. It's like, in their mind, it's like they have to get on the Ellen Show or make it to the New York Times bestsellers list to be acknowledged, because they're not getting the acknowledgement within their own community. It's not being made a big deal. That's the whole point. So, hey, I digress. But going back to the whole voting thing, I think also people kind of misinterpreted what I meant to say that voting isn't enough. And people who did vote, they made it like it's a magic wand, right? Like voting is some magic wand that we've arrived because we voted. We've done this big thing because we voted, right? And I'm like, okay, one can look at voting as first order change, so to speak. There are two different types of change, generally speaking, within a social context. It's first order change and second order change. And I'm like, I look at voting as very minimal change, if it does anything, especially for the black community. And I know many different people have so many different perspectives on this. You guys are welcome to share your perspective below, but I don't know how much significant voting is going to impact, or having black officials in office, what big of a change is that going to do, versus if we were to actually develop our own way of life. Like, we develop our own infrastructure, build up schools, build up banks, hospitals, build up, like, in essence, a little Africa, have our own. And a lot of black people, integrationists, are really much opposed to that. They're like, no, we're here in America, let's integrate. And it's like, yes, I'm not saying we have to go back to Africa. We can do it right here in America. Create our own political system, create our own political party, within the system, if that even is possible. But to assume that, okay, we're going to vote Democrat with the assumption that they're going to come and just do all this change for the black community is just like, come on, y'all. And then to to that defense, someone said, this African-American woman was like, well, I don't vote for politicians thinking that they're going to do anything for the black community. I vote for politicians because I want them to implement change for me as a middle-class woman. I'm like, okay, thanks for being honest. But people should know, like, of course, my focus is with the black community. And I told her, I say, yes, you're voting for that because it's going to bring change for the middle class. But I say most African Americans aren't part of the middle class. We know this. Black people are at the bottom. So that's where my focus is. And obviously her focus is something different. Fine. I hope y'all can understand that when I make these videos or I share my posts, right, it's not to try to change y'all. Like, that's not my goal. I feel like a person is rooted in what they believe in, and that's just what they believe in. I'm not here to change y'all. I'm just here to express my perspective on things. People who agree with it or support it, they're going to like and share, and people who don't, of course, they're going to present their difference of opinion. But that's not my goal. Let me try to change your mind, or I'm so upset because you disagree. I hope y'all don't get that, like, to get that perspective. That just because I can argue my point or defend my point, that I'm just here to just change your mind, or I'm upset, or I'm angry, or I'm this or I'm that. Just like, dude, I got a lot more stuff, more important, I feel like, than the stuff that's on social media to be worried about. Speaking of, following this video, I'm going to come and do another video about a very tragic situation that happened last night. Following this video, say too many black folks equate success as white praise and acknowledgement. Yeah, essentially, they do. And it's unfortunate that that's when oftentimes they get the acceptance and the praise, is when they make it on those platforms like Ellen, the New York Times bestsellers list. And it's like, no, we got to support and acknowledge, more specifically, each other's success. And recognize that, man. That's the reason why every single year we do Ubawa's Top 100 Authors of 2018. And even that creates a problem, because it's like people like, oh, well, my name ain't on the list, so that list is fake. I'm like, guess what? I didn't create the list. The list is developed based on nominations received. I made a video about this. And I've said this over and over again. And because there's so many authors that follow Ubawa, they get upset. I'm talking about thousands of authors follow Ubawa, right? And people get upset because their name didn't make the list. And I'm like, okay, in order to get nominated on the list, it has to be done not by yourself, but by one of your readers. They have to nominate you. And you have people say, well, my name ain't on the list. Well, where's your readers? And obviously they're not following Ubawa, so of course they will have to be following Ubawa. Like, you expect that your name is supposed to magically just make Ubawa's list? Like, it's like you can't win for losing, You want to create this list to acknowledge the work that authors are doing, because they're not getting the acknowledgement other places. And even if they are getting it other places, then you just want to recognize it even more and just celebrate black literature, or the works by African American authors, whether it's written for a black audience or not. That is the goal of Ubawa. I mean, we've been in existence since 2009. It's no surprise what our mission is. It's no secret or none of that. It's all there in front of everybody, right? And so People still get upset about that. And I'm just like, goes back to the topic of this video. I'm not about to argue. I will state my point, whether you accept it or not. That's it, and I just move on. So you guys can continue the discussion below if you like. Share this video, but it just interests me to see that. Like, I guess sometimes people, they just, I don't know, maybe they got something else going on in their life, but I'm like, honestly, I don't have the time to argue. I don't have the energy to argue. I don't. Like, my plate is full. You know, I have a lot going on. I'm sure you guys do too. You guys work, you know, you have other obligations, family, children. So I'm just the positive person, try to stay positive. And I'm not here to, you know, I'm not here to start no fires or anything like that. Of course, some of what I say may be controversial because you guys see it from a different perspective, right? You know, but that's okay. We can disagree on different things, and we can still be all pro-black. We can still be a black community and still have differences on our perspectives as it relates to voting. You know, because that was the most kind of recent big issue that came up, you know, on my page, and people were just like, oh, you know, you didn't vote? Like, completely ignored. This dude completely ignored my post, right? Because I actually took a picture, because I take public transportation out here in LA, and I took a picture of the sign that they actually covered the machine where you tap your card and put your money in. It was covered with this picture that says, go vote. That says that your ride is going to be free today, go vote. You guys can go to my page and you'll see that picture. It's a colored picture, like green and orange or whatever colors it was. And I shared that when I got out on the bus with the picture. This is the caption I put. I said, I get on the bus to, you know, tap my card, and then I see this happens, right? And then I began to talk about how, you know, I'm not really much of a voter, but I say, shout out to those who are going out there to vote, you know, do your thing, that's you, right? And I actually gave a kind of rationale for why I choose not to engage in that process, this whole political thing, right? The political process of voting. And do you know, this guy commented and was like, what? You don't vote? He totally missed what I said. Because if he read my post, he would have saw that I said that I'm not voting, and my reason, I gave it a very explicit, like, I'm talking about very direct explanation for why I said that with the picture. The picture I took of the little sign they had that covered the machine on the bus. And it was very straightforward, you know, no subliminal messages or none of that, very straightforward, and it just went over his head, right? His whole thing, because I think a lot of people get caught up in this whole hysteria of, oh, you need to vote, go vote, go vote. That's all they know, the whole language. We don't even know, they don't even understand who they're voting for, why they're voting, and what type of impact that's going to have. Like, what does that mean to vote? What does it mean not to vote? And they assume, they're very quick, they think that black and white thinking has to be one way or the other. So either you vote and you're making a change, or you don't vote and you're not making a change. In their minds, that's how they see it. And I'm like, y'all, we got to think more dynamically than that. The whole black and white thinking, you know, if this, the if then thinking, like, no, it doesn't, humans are not that easy. You know, some situations are kind of complicated, and they're like, oh, well, our ancestors fought for our right to vote, you know, they fight and bled and died and trying to guilt trip you. And I'm like, not that I don't have compassion for my ancestors, I do, me of all people, but that doesn't work. You can't guilt trip me into doing anything or not doing anything. Because if I have my mind made up for my reasons for not necessarily engaging in it, and I explained to them like numerous times on why, the things I do, you know, instead of voting, right, the alternative to voting, I talked about this, right? And I say, actually, I'm not the one to brag about what I do, my contribution to the black community or to the community at large. That's not me. I don't go around, oh, I do this, I do that. But my work speaks for itself. I will share some things that I've done and things that I do. Yes, I share, but I'm not here to just be holding up a freaking advertising sign saying, well, I don't vote, but this is what I do. I mean, maybe that's the expectation. Maybe you guys are thinking that, okay, well, if you don't want us to vote, or if you don't vote, then maybe you should tell us what to do instead. So I actually did, because I kind of got a little bit annoyed by people kept asking, Well, what's the alternative? Well, why you don't vote, or what are you doing? That was the biggest question. What are you doing, right? It's actually briefly kind of went into some detail about what I have done, what I'm doing now, and my rationale for that. Basically, just saying that I'm more of an activist. I don't really. I look at voting as like I said, first order change. So it's like you put in that responsibility into the hands of the politicians to do the work that you want them to do for the community, whatever. Whereas I look at it as I kind of take a more active approach. Like I am a community organizer. I have programs that I've developed and continue to develop that's impacting the African American community. And not only that, yes, I get that, yes, you don't just vote for politicians, you vote for policy. And some policies do impact the African American community. But I also made a whole rationale on that to say, okay, yes, people can implement these policies, right? But we know we still live in this system. You can have, yes, these changes in politicians, these changes in policies that are on the books, but how it's played out looks totally different. And we know a lot of times the law is not designed to protect us, it's designed to protect them. That's just the reality. I know y'all don't want to hear this. You don't want to hear this because it's sad, it's scary, it's disheartening, right? To know that, okay, your vote doesn't count, and America like to make you believe that your vote counts. Everyone's votes count, That's why they tell you go vote, go vote, go vote, to make you feel like your voice matters. But somebody said it best, and there was a meme to say, and people want to joke about memes, like, oh, well, they only had to respond with the meme. And I asked them why they don't vote, and they just gave me a meme. The meme speaks wonders. A picture's worth 1,000 words. And all you gotta do is see the meme. And there was a meme that says, if black lives don't matter, what the fuck y'all think that your vote is gonna matter? How in the hell do you think that your vote really matters if black lives don't matter? They don't give a fuck. But hey, I can go on and on about this, right? And I know that y'all feel very passionate about your vote and being an American and all of that. And I don't want to take that away from you guys. So I just had to say that. But I am going to come back in my next video to talk about a very tragic incident that happened out here in California last night. And I will catch you guys in the next one. All right.